Hi everyone. I really wish I could be there with you today, but I'm expecting a baby any day now. So in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about data analysis and academic research, and I hope you learn something from it. Please write down any questions that you may have. Ms. Duga can send those questions to me, and I'll be sure to answer them for you. All right, so this is the outline of the topics that I'll be covering. Notice that the presentation is going to focus heavily on data analysis because I understand, or as I understand, that's where you are in the research process. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Megan Bro. I'm currently the Partnership and Data Coordinator for LPSS GERA. So I deal with data on a daily basis. I'm also a doctoral candidate, which means I finished all of my classes to become a doctor of education. I just have to complete my dissertation to actually get my degree. And a dissertation is essentially a really big research study. So I deal with data a lot in that aspect of my life as well. I also have a Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction, a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, and a Bachelor of Arts in English. Before I started working with GERA, I taught English and Social Studies for almost 10 years. Okay, so I want to quickly go over the academic research process. Much of this you've already done. So you should have chosen your topic, decided the population that you wanted to study. You should have come up with questions for that topic and also reviewed the literature on that topic. In order to see. So reviewing the literature should have helped you to see what has and hasn't been explored in relation to your topic. Then those things that haven't been explored, those are your literature gaps. So as a researcher, you want to contribute something new on the topic. So you should use those gaps to guide your own study. Also, keep in mind that certain aspects of a topic may have been studied, but also consider the populations that have been studied. For example, if a topic has been explored, or let's say if a topic has not been explored in connection with South Louisiana high school students, then that could be your literature gap. Once you figured out what you want to study based on that review, you begin working on your methodology. Your methodology, which again, you guys have already done this, includes your research questions and all of the procedures you're going to take to answer those questions. While working on your methodology, you should have also put together your survey instruments or interview protocols or anything else that you plan to use throughout your study. Okay, so along with methodology, if you were doing a study outside of a class requirement, you would need approval from an internal review board. Since this is a class assignment, you do not need that. But I wanted to bring that up just because as you move on with your education, you go on to college, many universities now are encouraging undergraduate research. And if you decide to do research outside of your classes, then you'll need to get approval from an IRB. And they just make sure that studies are ethical and safe, especially if you're working with certain populations like children or, human subjects. So after you get through methodology, you begin recruiting participants, which you've done, and then you start collecting data. Now, when you recruit participants, usually you're going to get consent from those people to participate, or if you're working with people under 18, then you would get consent from their parents and then assent from them to participate. So if you're doing survey data, quite often if you add into the survey something along the lines of your completion of this survey is your consent to participate in a study, and then like explain your study, that's considered sufficient. Anyway, so then so as I said, you collect data, and you guys have done that. Those are all things that you've done already. So now I'm going to talk about data preparation and analysis fairly briefly. Then I want to spend more time showing you techniques to work with your own data. Okay, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you to let go of any of your own bias before you dig into your data. Always make sure that you're looking at data objectively. Sometimes we think we know what we're going to find. I just want to remind you not to try to see what you want or expect to see whenever you're digging into that data. Now, the way you analyze your data is going to depend in large part on the type of study you conducted. Now, that could be a qualitative study, a quantitative study, or it could be a mixture of the two, which would be called a mixed method study. A qualitative study tends to be subjective and based on individual experiences. So the data are typically open-ended and gathered through interviews, focus groups, observations, or open-ended survey questions. Since it's so subjective and focused on the individual experiences, sample sizes tend to be very small. These are deep studies usually meant to build upon ideas. They're exploratory. Also, qualitative data are often transcriptions of recorded interviews, unless they're those open-ended surveys that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so a quantitative study, on the other hand, is essentially the opposite of a qualitative study. It's objective instead of subjective. It's based on numbers and close-ended questions. Within a quantitative study, there should be a minimum, very, very minimum, of 30 participants in a sample, but the larger the sample, the better. This is because around 30, you'll start to see a distribution, but the more people you get to participate, the more of a distribution you'll be able to see and actually get to a bell curve. Now, quantitative studies typically use statistical methods. So I don't know how many of you have taken statistics, but if you have and you're doing a quantitative study, that's really going to help you a lot. So those statistical methods are meant to prove hypotheses. And like I said, you could also have a mixed method study, which includes both quantitative and qualitative methods. I've used both qualitative or I've done both qualitative and quantitative research. I absolutely love qualitative research because I like learning about individuals, and I like that deeper dive that you get with qualitative data. But I will tell you that it is much more time consuming than quantitative. With quantitative, when you go into college and you're doing research, you're going to have access to software where you just, you put numbers into the software and it spits out your data for you. So it tends to be a lot quicker. Okay, so moving on to data preparation. Before you can begin analyzing your data, you need to make sure that it is ready to be analyzed. First, you want to validate your data by checking to make sure that the people who responded fit your target population. So if I am doing a study on college freshmen and I'm going through my data and I see, a sophomore responded, I'm going to have to get rid of that entry, that response. Also, you want to make sure that you're checking for, check to make sure that your respondents completed the questions the way they were supposed to. Check for errors. Sometimes people do surveys and they put silly answers and things like that. You want to get rid of that. Those sorts of responses. They're outliers. Okay, so then very important, you want to make sure that your data is clean. For qualitative data, particularly if you did an interview, you want to listen to your recording while going through the text to ensure that the words and spelling, that the correct words and the spelling of the words are used. For quantitative data, you want to make sure that you remove any duplicate responses, ensure that spelling and format are consistent. That's going to be very important whenever you go. I'm going to show you guys how to make pivot tables and charts and things like that. And you'll see that if your data isn't consistent, it's going to cause problems when you go to create those visualizations. So also, moving on to ethical considerations, you want to make sure that you remove any personally identifiable information like names. If you did get names in your survey, you want to make sure that you assign pseudonyms or unique identifiers like numbers, just to protect your participants' identities. Okay, so finally, data coding is also very important because it helps to make your work more efficient. If you're working with qualitative data, you want to spend time familiarizing yourself with the data. Look for themes or patterns in the responses. You can code data using your qualitative data using a color system, or you can put it into categories that will help you to understand your overall results. For quantitative data, it's fairly similar. You will group data to make it easier to analyze. For example, if you have a large range of ages, let's say you got your participants' ages because that's important to your study. It could be easier for you if you go ahead and group your ages into ranges, like for example, maybe 15 to 18 as a range, and all of those people who are within that range are placed into that category. That can make it a little bit more efficient. All right, so moving on to data analysis within the different types of research. I mentioned some of this before when it comes to qualitative analysis, but the key here is ensuring that you're separating your qualitative data from what's called anecdotal evidence. As a data coordinator, I've noticed this a lot. Anytime, I see the importance in qualitative data, recognizing the individual experience, but quite often when I mention qualitative data, people will say, yeah, but that's anecdotal. It's not anecdotal if you have multiple people who respond with the same thing. If you notice a pattern, if you notice a theme in those responses, it's not anecdotal, it's qualitative. And that means something. If you want your data to be significant, you have to highlight those themes and patterns among those various responses. And ultimately, those patterns should answer whatever questions you want to know. Okay. All right. The methods you use to analyze quantitative data will depend on your specific research questions. So there are different things that you can do to, within your quantitative analysis. You could use descriptive statistics, so measures of frequency, count, frequency, percent, measures of central tendency, which is basically average, mean, median, mode, measures of variation, how data is spread out, range, variance, standard deviation, or you can use inferential statistics, which is a little more advanced, correlation, regression analysis, analysis of variance, frequency tables. So I find descriptive statistics tend to be very easy, but again, it's going to depend on what you're asking, what you're trying to figure out. You do want to make sure that you're using these methods correctly. So you might want to get people to look over your work, because you don't want to put that information out there if there are mistakes. And I do just want to highlight the fact that correlation does not equal causation. So if you find a correlation between two constructs, you want to be careful when you're writing about it. Make sure that you don't say things like this causes this or that causes that. It's just a relationship. Okay, so next I want to show you how you can use tools to make your data easier to work with and to understand. This particular slide has a few things that I use. So Google Sheets, Google Data Studio, Tableau Public, which is free, Jump, which is good for quantitative analysis, and MaxQDA, which is good for qualitative analysis. Those last two are not free and they're fairly expensive. I'm adding them here just so you know the names. If when you go onto a university, you may get access to these things. They're really good, but for now, these things on the top are all free. And I think I'm going to focus on Google Sheets because I know that it seems like the majority of you did surveys through Google Forms. So then your data is your data will be in Google Sheets. So I think you guys, or I'm sure you probably already know this, but if not, if you go into your Google form and you click on responses in the middle, it will bring you to something that looks like this. And notice here that there is an icon for Google Sheets. If you click on that, it will open up all of your data in a Google Sheet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some raw data that I have, and I'm going to show you some things that can help you to work with your data. Okay. All right, so with my data, I got rid of personally identifiable information. I created unique identifiers, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, so once you have your data open, what I'd like you to do, what I find is really helpful, is you highlight this top row here, go to data, and then I'm going to remove it for right now. But you go to data and then you click create filter. Okay. And this allows you to do all sorts of cool things with your data. So just an example, let's say I only wanted to look at the females within my sample. I'm going to click, notice I'm going to do that again. I clicked here on these little lines next to gender. I clear all of the check marks, and then I'm clicking on female because I only want to look at the females that I have here. Okay, so then what that does is it shows me only the females. Okay, so you can filter out like that. And then when you want to go back to seeing everything, you click select all, and then all of your data comes back. So this is a lot here. Over 2,000 people that we're looking at here. And this particular data set it's college enrollment. So we have, I have, I like to color code things. So I have in green all of the students who are enrolled in college. And then in red, those who are not. Okay. So I showed you how to create filters so that you can look at specific things. You can also filter by color if you wanted to only look at students who are not in college. You could very quickly. And then remove that whenever you're ready to look at everybody. If I only wanted to look at students who are enrolled at, let's see, okay, let's see if we want to look at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. I would clear everybody and then just click that one. And that just gives me, nope, clear everybody. Actually, let's just look at this one university here. Okay, click OK. Okay, so then I can see that one person. And then Select all to get everybody back. Click OK. You have everybody back. Notice that I also have like the high schools from which these students graduated. You know, I'm Gear Up, so I would like to look at only the Gear Up high schools. So I can do that. Oops. Okay, so that's filtering. That's, you know, that's pretty cool if you want to, you know, just look at things like that. The next thing I want to show you how to do is create pivot tables, because they are extremely helpful whenever you're, you know, analyzing your data. So in order to create a pivot table, you're going to move over to the left-hand corner right next to the A, and you're going to click this right here. What that's going to do is highlight everything. Actually, before I do that, let me take off this filter. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. Okay, so you highlight everything, and to create a pivot table, you're going to go into Insert, Pivot Table, Create. Okay, so before I create a pivot table, I need to think about what I want to create, what I want to see. I'm going to start by going to Values, click Add, and I'm going to go to Unique Identifier. Okay, everybody within my data set has that unique number. So if I make that my value, it's going to make sure that everybody in this set is counted. Okay, now I'm going to go to rows, and let's say I want to look at okay, I'm going to filter out post-secondary. I'm going to filter out not enrolled. So I'm only looking at students who are enrolled in college. So notice how that number dropped. And I am also going to filter out, if I go to college access, remember I am Gear Up, so I only want to look at the Gear Up students. So then that number dropped again, right? So what I want to see is, of these students who are enrolled, I want to see their ethnicity, and I want to see their gender as well. So you can drag that there. Okay, there's one outlier here, which means that I need to work on cleaning that data. Something's wrong. So we're going to go back in a second and try to figure out what's going on there. But see, this is a pivot table. So you can think about the things that you want to see. Remember, the first thing you need to do is go to Values. Okay, and you need to have some kind of unique identifier under that value point. Okay, now be careful what is highlighted under Summarize By. Count A is fine. If you put sum, it's going to add everything together. You put average, it's going to give you the average. So you just want to be careful with that. Okay, so once you have, I'm going to go ahead and remove that one. But once you have that, you can actually create visuals with this table. So I'm going to click insert, click the table, insert chart. Okay, and then automatically it gives me this chart. Okay, which is not perfect. Okay, it's messy, it's not easy to read. So what can we do to fix this? If we go back to our chart, to our table, if we get rid of show totals, it's going to clean up that chart for us. Okay. See, these two yellows are fairly similar, so we want to fix that. So if I go, I'm going to click this particular slice, and we need another color. So I can make that red, or I can change any of these colors. Some of these are quite similar. You know. Also, you can change the kind of chart. So instead of doing a pie chart, you can do, a bar graph like this, which is actually a lot easier to read. So that's something that, and if you copy and paste this, you can actually change the titles here too. So, all right. So that is how you create a pivot table, and that's how you create a chart. Let's see. Another thing I wanted to do, I mentioned cleaning up data. One way I like to check through my data is using that filter method that I mentioned earlier. So if I open up that filter on the college name column, you can see that the majority of the colleges are in caps. They're spelled out completely, and then we see an outlier, right? Cornell University is not formatted that same way. So I'm going to click on that. So it brings me to that particular entry. And I'm going to clean it up. So select all. And I think I only have one at Cornell, but let's just see if that, yep, it's still only one. But if I had multiple students at Cornell and that one entry was different from the rest, then whenever I'm trying to look at the total, it would have made it difficult. So you want to make sure that your data is all formatted in the same way. Okay, let's see another thing we can do. We did pivot tables, we did charts. One thing that's really cool about Google Sheets, or if you're working in Excel, is you can do formulas to figure out, you can figure out things that way, but I'm looking. Let's see. Like if I wanted, okay, so this doesn't mean anything because it's a program code, but let's say this was a piece of, you know, this was data that I needed to, you know, have all, like I needed to add it all up. You know, I could do that. And I'm just going to put it at the top because it's easier, by going to equal sum. Okay. Then open parenthesis. And then if I highlight all the way down, it's going to add all of these together. It's going to take a while because remember I said it's over 2,000 students. Okay. All right. So that's all of them. I'm going to put the close parenthesis, press enter, and then that's the total of all of those numbers. Now remember I said it doesn't mean anything because these are just the program codes. But if it was something that you needed to add, you could do that. You can also multiply that way by doing equal product. So that's really cool. Quick math. Let's see. What else? Oh, okay. I had mentioned that you should have a unique identifier for each of your participants. So an easy way to do that, if you haven't done that, is let's say we just do it by number. If you start with the number 1 here and you scroll down, okay, that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Let's say we do 1, 2, highlight those 2, and drag down from the corner. It should count. Yep. So then if you do that all the way to the bottom, it's going to give each participant its own unique number. So that'll help you whenever you create pivot tables. Let's see what else we can do. I can show you some of the tables that I created. We did gender and ethnicity. These were some survey responses. Okay, these are enrollment tables. And the more you play around with pivot tables, you'll learn how to get them the way you want them, because you can put things, you don't have to just put it in rows. You could do things in columns as well. Overall majors. So we can see here, you know, those top majors. And be careful with pie charts because this gets very overwhelming. If I wanted to, you know, to share this with anybody, I would probably keep nursing and then gray out everything else just to show, nursing is our top major within this particular group of students. Oh, another thing that's really cool, if I wanted to see those students who answered nursing as their major, I could click on this 35 right here, and it's going to give me that list of students. Okay, so that's something else that's really cool with those particular tables. I have majors by school, so pivot tables are really, really helpful. You can see that the majority of our students tend to go to UL. Yep. So those are some things that can help you to really, understand your data, especially the visuals, things like that. And there's so many other features that are really helpful. It's just I would probably need like a whole semester to teach all of these different things. But if you guys have, questions, if you're trying to do something with your data analysis, specific questions, please give them to Ms. Dugas. She can pass them over to me, and I will, try to find the answer for you. So I think that's it. I hope you guys learned something from this. Again, I'm so sorry I couldn't be there with you. Let me know. Ms. Dugas, let me know if they need anything, if I can help with anything. Thank you so much.